Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Jamie Richards from Extraordinary Life Chiropractic here at the Life by Design Center. And I just want to say thank you for making it here to this page. You've come here because you're seeking out a path, a blueprint, some type of way to get relief, whether it be from neck pain, back pain, sciatica, shoulder problems, or even other conditions that just nothing else has seemed to help. Here at the Life by Design Center, we are a Life by Design certified location. There's over 50 locations around the world using the blueprint that I'm going to share with you today. Now, if you were to apply the principles and the strategies and the action steps that I give you today, I feel confident that you can start the process of getting some relief. However, if you were to apply these principles in a more significant way, I want to show you how applying this blueprint, this Life by Design blueprint, has for thousands, literally thousands, not only helped them overcome what they were experiencing in that moment and get relief from that initial concern, but also to go deeper to recover and repair conditions and problems that are more than just the surface layer, to truly go through a health transformation. First thing to discuss is the concept of symptoms. Most people's understanding of symptoms is that the symptom is the problem. But the symptom is not the problem. That's why it's called a symptom. We've used that language before and you've heard people say, oh, it's just the symptom of a real problem. That's what a symptom is. So whether it's pain, which tends to be one of the most obvious ones for people, but it could be other types of symptoms as well, whether it be fatigue, difficulty sleeping, immobility, headaches, neck pain, back pain, sciatica, shoulder immobility. And we can go down the list of all these different conditions, even things that may seem like weird symptoms that may not even seem to be related to the spine or the physical body. Symptoms are not the real problem. In fact, in my experience, they're more what I would call collateral damage. Think about it this way. Let me explain. If you were to take your house and your house had a foundation, and that foundation had a crack in it, and that crack was significant enough that over time, the house started to shift. And as the house started to shift, immediately, you may not actually recognize any changes among the structure. But year 1, year 2, year 3, 4, 5, 6, as time passes, and the structure starts to weaken, you may start to see symptoms. These symptoms in your home may be difficulty opening a door, or the windows are hard to open and close, or you may see cracking in the drywall. Could even be to an extreme situation where pipes start to burst or the electrical system starts to become damaged. And you bring in an expert and they look at these systems and they may address those systems where the symptom is, but if someone were to come in and look at the structure, they would recognize that there was a problem with the structure. And until you correct that structure, you will always repeat those symptoms over and over again. And it's not to say there's not a time and a place to reduce some of those symptoms, patch up the drywall, reframe the door, but understand you will repeat that process over and over and over again. And for a lot of people, that's what they've experienced with their health, is they've repeated these same chronic symptoms over and over and over again and really experienced very little relief. If you could imagine this for your own body, what are the core problems that may be affecting you in ways both that you would recognize, the door not closing, the windows not shutting, and in your case, maybe it's pain or some other type of symptom, but also affecting you in all kinds of ways that you either don't realize are connected, or maybe you don't realize at all, at least not yet. It might take another year or another 5 years or 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road. That's how the body works. The body's actually amazing at adapting to the situation that it's in. It gets really good at getting good at what you make it do. And if sitting too much, or sitting in a desk, or immobility, or lack of exercise, or an injury that occurred, whether it be a car accident or trauma, or just stress in general, accumulating itself on the body over and over and over again, the body gets used to that and it adapts, and it does it very slowly. But over time, you may start to see and feel the effects of those changes. You need to address the deeper issue. Now, whether you address that early, which is the ideal, or whether you start to address that later, which is less than ideal, but better than never addressing it at all. With the example of your house, the foundation is the core problem. Everything else is what we call collateral damage. And so what are the potential core problems with your body, and what are some of those solutions? Let's talk about the ones that you may realize are obvious, and I'll give you some solutions to start there. Number 1 is movement. Your body needs to move, and maybe you think, well, I don't need to do an exercise program, or, I go to a gym. Both fine. Number 1, you do need to do and follow through with some type of movement program. It doesn't have to be in a gym per se, but your body's designed to move. And so simply action step number one is going through every single joint in your body and getting those joints moving. In fact, I'll share with you a bonus. I'll put a video available in here for you so you can actually see what some of those movements look like, taking your body through this joint-to-joint mobility, as we would call it in our blueprint. Number two is you need to build up strength. And that strength, again, doesn't have to be in a gym. It could be in a gym, but you need to get your body stronger. There's specific spinal rehabilitation exercises that can do that, and movements that can help you do that you can do right in your own home. You don't have to go anywhere else to do that, but it can be done on a consistent basis, and you would see a huge impact and a huge benefit. So that's core problem number one, is movement. Number two is diet and nutrition. And you might think, well, what does diet and nutrition have to do with, let's say, neck pain or sciatica? And it has a lot to do with that. The foods that we eat play a huge role in how the body rebuilds itself, its ability to recover and heal. If the foods that are going in are not highly nutritious and they're not nutrient dense, then it's more likely that you're going to increase the inflammation in your body. And if you know anything about health or have read anything about health in the last 20 years, inflammation, specifically chronic inflammation, is not good. That's not what we want, and it's creating more pain. So if you already have damage in your body and then you add in the chronic inflammatory process, that damage is going to feel worse and worse and worse and worse over time. So when you look at rebuilding your body, we need to start by eating nutrient-dense foods, and we need to start by eating real food. I mean, as much as that's a simple action step for people, the majority of people are not consuming real food. What does real food look like? It's food that doesn't have a bunch of different ingredients. That's a great way to start. An apple, a carrot, a steak. Those are real foods, and the more nutrient-dense foods we eat that have a great combination of proteins and good healthy fats, the better off our body's going to be able to recover and repair itself. Number three is how we think. Once again, similar to food, you may not think, well, my mindset is playing a role in my sciatica or in my neck pain or headaches or shoulder problems. But it is. Once again, statistically, if you look at the research, people who have, a more negative mindset, people who have, psychological depression, people who are struggling mentally, which is a large portion of the population, have more pain or experience more pain. And so how we think is a big part of that. And there's things you can do and action steps you can take. These are probably a bit more complicated, but simple things like learning to be grateful. Look at the things, even when life is challenging, find the things that we can be grateful about. Say thank you to somebody. Do a good deed. There's a million different action steps we can take. We cover these in the Think by Design Blueprint and give our actual patients steps and processes to use in order to get a result that will improve the way that they're thinking. And it does have an effect on the physical body. The last thing, and what I want to focus on here for this training video today, is the spine. And you maybe even clicked on this to get to this page because you saw, do you need relief from a spine problem or a spinal problem? So what does the spine have to do with health? I think for a lot of people, as long as there's not direct pain right here or somewhere that they can focus on, they don't think about their spine. But your spine is very much like an organ. It's no different than your teeth. Your teeth need to be cared for. They need to be corrected if there's a structural problem with the teeth, and people understand that. The same is true with your spine. There's a specific makeup to the spine. So let's talk about the anatomy of the spine and focus on what a core problem with the spine could actually look like. So your spine is designed to have 4 curves. These curves stack up on one another. So if you can imagine an S shape. And so these curves stack up, and when they're stacked up, they function like a spring. And if you can imagine, again, a spring is very strong, but when you take the curvatures out of a spring, that spring gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And so these arches or arcs in the curve are there by design. They're there on purpose. And then in between the vertebrae are the discs, and the discs are that gelatinous, fluffy substance that creates cushion. So again, that spine can work like a spring. And then what we don't see is inside of that is the spinal nervous system. The nervous system travels from the brain through the upper regions of the spine, and it travels all the way down to the base. And of course, it branches out into many, many, many nerve pathways. And it's those pathways that are both receiving information from the body in all different ways, not just about damage, but about what our organ systems are doing. There's this constant feedback that's coming through the nervous system into the brain, and your brain works as a central processor. And so the processor coordinates all the information, and then it feeds it back to the different systems. And that system, if you imagine, almost like a safety pin being closed, and the signals are traveling all the way through. There's this almost beautiful orchestration of information that the body carries out. 99.9% of all the processes we don't feel, we don't even think about. You're not thinking about your heart beating or your digestive system working, or your body healing for that matter. But when we interrupt or interfere with that system, it creates a disconnect. And that disconnect not just can lead to what you may feel as pain or symptoms, but more importantly, that in and of itself is a core problem. That can happen without any pain. You take a cavity, for example. How many people have had a cavity, but their tooth didn't hurt, or they had a cavity for an extended time, then their tooth started to hurt? It's the same type of process. Now, what can happen over time is not just that immediate change at the spine and affecting the nervous system, but it can start to break down, and therein lies the bigger problem. When this problem doesn't get addressed early, it starts to accumulate. No different than if you didn't exercise day 1, 2, 3, you may not feel or notice a change, but on year 1, 2, and 10, you're gonna feel, notice, and even see those changes. The same is true with the spine and nervous system. So one of those changes is the spine changes shape. It can start to actually lose the normal curvatures, and when we lose the normal curvatures in the spine gets weaker. And as the spine weakens and starts to collapse, the body adapts again. And one of the things it does is it lays down new bone. We look at the degenerative process. I know for many of my patients, they've been told, oh, you have degeneration, you're getting older. And of course, I always ask the question, well, then why are the 5th and 6th vertebrae in your neck looking older than the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th? They're no older. The only difference is there's a problem. The body is adapted to a loss of curve. There's changes in the structure, and your body's doing the best it can. But the degenerative process over time is simply the body's way of adapting to the change. And so the real solution is to correct those problems earlier and not get to that point. If you've gotten to that point, then the next solution is to correct those problems to slow or stop that process from continuing down that path. Now, how do we do that? And this lies the fundamental difference with a corrective chiropractor. As a corrective chiropractor, our focus is on the spine and nervous system and looking for the core problem, measuring the core problem, analyzing the core problem, correcting the core problem, and monitoring that change. Now, that doesn't mean that traditional chiropractic isn't great and wonderful, and I believe fully there's a time and a place for that, and there are some fantastic traditional chiropractors in our community. As a corrective chiropractor, we start with testing. I feel that testing and not guessing at what's happening, having objective measurements to determine, number one, if there's even a problem, at least a problem that's correctable, and then to confirm that our intervention or applying the blueprint is actually having an impact. Of course, I would love to see people get relief. Of course, you'll see symptomatic changes. But how do we know the underlying core problem is changing if we're not measuring that problem, if we haven't assessed that problem? So following a complimentary case review, which is an opportunity for every potential patient in our practice to speak with one of our doctors. In speaking with you, we can learn more about your case. We can learn more about your history. We can learn more about all the different stresses, both physical and traumatic, that have affected your body and your spine over time. Once we're on the same page with the process, then and only then can we move into what we consider our biostructural examination process. The biostructural examination is paramount. It's 15 in-house tests that allow us to identify 3 major components. Number 1, structure. So looking at the structural problems, identifying the core problem specifically around structure. Number 2, looking at the neurological system. So carrying out tests like electromyography, thermography, and other tests that tell us what the current state of your nervous system is. And the third series of tests are what I call baseline physiological. Things like blood pressure, pulse oximetry, respiratory volume, things that tell us what level your body's functioning at now. So if we do accept your case, we do find a core problem, we do start making corrections, then we are able to monitor not just the changes to the spine and the nervous system, but also a handful of other physiological markers that you may never even consider. As an example, it's very common for patients who've had a core problem, gone through a corrective period, and retested to see changes in how much lung volume they have, or how much oxygen is in their blood, or how strong their upper body is, or how their body distributes weight from side to side, in addition to all the other subjective type changes they've had, whether it be feeling better, functioning better. The list goes on and on and on. Following the collection of data, our team analyzes the information. One of the most important pieces for us here as a team is to look at every series of tests, to analyze where that patient falls compared to other patients, and to identify whether or not we can help that case. Once the test analysis is complete, I will meet with you, or our team will meet with you, to review those test results. In most cases, 4 years are a lot better than 2, so reviewing those test results with somebody who may be involved in your healthcare decision making, it's much easier to explain to other people involved in your healthcare why we've taken this action step and why you've started the process of correction. At the end of the day, the most important piece is that you get the relief that you need and you solve the problem that is affecting you in ways both that you feel and ways that maybe you have no idea about. Should we be on the same page, and should we be able to work together someday and actually accept your case and help you get through the process and apply this success path? Our team would love to be able to do that for you and help you get the results that you want. I will say that we have a fantastic practice. It is a waitlist practice. So whenever you're ready and you would like to go through the complimentary case review, simply click the button and schedule a time for you to meet with one of our doctors. If after reviewing your case or your test results, we feel like we cannot accept your case, we will do our absolute best to send you in a direction that is right for you. From everybody at Extraordinary Life Chiropractic at the Life by Design Center, please remember, when it comes to your health, you're worth it.